Welcome to This Is How We Create, a show that digs deeper into the creative life of contemporary artists of color. Discover what feeds their creativity and how they found or are finding their artistic voice. Through these intimate and candid conversations, you'll gain insights into the lives of creative professionals of color that are hard to find anywhere else. Hey, welcome back to This Is How We Create. Today, I'm going to chat with you about something that's a little bit unusual, but stay with me. So let's talk about Death Valley for a second. And it's not necessarily the cheeriest place, but Death Valley is also themed after the dying. But stick with me here. What happens in that valley after it rains is kind of like magic. And I can't stop thinking about it because our guide on a recent trip to the Four Corners was talking about dehydrated shrimp. Really weird. And I was like, oh my gosh, this has a lot to do with creativity. So picture this. You're standing at the edge of what's usually, I'd say, the most hostile, cracked, nothing can survive here landscape in North America. Now, I think that this is the kind of place where people might even die for forgetting a water bottle or forgetting to pack enough water or snacks. Dark but true. Then, when the winter rains come through, the valley floods, and then suddenly, millions of tiny fairy shrimp appear in the water. When my guide was telling me this story, what made me gasp is that those shrimp eggs were buried in the sand for decades, like 20, 30, sometimes even 50 years. And they were waiting in the dark, not growing, not moving, completely, utterly, absolutely not alive, dead, dehydrated. But turns out they weren't actually dead. They were just really persistent and dehydrated. And so if you see where I'm going with this, hold on, because not only is there the shrimp, there's also this plant called resurrection moss, and you can find it looking black, and it's the kind of thing that you step over when you're hiking if you're not even noticing, and it looks like nothing's happening. But if you were to pour water over it, within hours, it unfurls into this impossibly green moss. And the transformation then becomes so complete that you're watching a time lapse in person. The moss tells us about something that we sometimes forget. And what is this exactly? Well, it's about dormancy. And so all of these stories had me thinking about dormancy a lot because when we're dormant, sometimes we think, oh, well, we failed. We think that nothing is happening. But sometimes things are happening because there's persistence. And when we're persistent about our creative work, when we think, or at least when I think about persistent work, I think about the hustle, the person posting every day, pitching their work every week, and showing up with relentless and visible momentum, which I have to be honest, matters a lot. But I think there's also another kind of persistence. And I think it's the kind of persistence that looks like nothing is happening. It might be like a manuscript that you open once a month and you type a few sentences, or it might be the photography work that you decide that, oh, I'm just going to work on a project and here and there. Or it might even be that you have a sketchbook and you're filling it in irregular bursts. I love that kind of creative practice because even when no one is watching, even when opportunities feel scarce, even when the entire climate around you feel a little bit hostile, I feel like that's kind of fairy shrimp energy going on there and resurrection moss magic energy. Because I think in those times, you're not really dormant, you're waiting for your rain. And one thing I really wanted to share with you is as I was hiking all around the Four Corners and we were going around this huge ridge when we were walking, and this is what I was thinking as I was hiking around the area where the Pueblos lived once upon a time and seeing what remains of these brick buildings that they created, I was thinking, man, I think my rain is going to come. And I think, friend, your rain is going to come because I think it's when our rain comes, we'll be ready, not because we've forced ourselves to bloom in a drought, not because we've potentially performed for growth for an audience who wasn't even paying attention. But I think the growth comes because we stayed alive under the surface, because it comes when we refuse to let conditions convince us that being buried means gone. The desert, I don't feel like it measures success by constant green. I think it measures success by what survives when things shift, by what's still there when the water finally returns. So if your creative work feels a little slow right now, if opportunities seem dry, if you're genuinely questioning whether any of this even matters, just remember the shrimp, remember the moss, and remember that persistence isn't always loud or visible or really impressive looking. Sometimes it's just the quiet decisions to stay buried but alive, waiting for your moment to rise. And also, can we talk about how nature is basically giving us pep talks if we really pay attention? The audacity of a shrimp waiting 50 years. 50 years, that's longer than, I think most people's careers. That audacity really warms my heart. They say that most people have like a 13, 15, 20-year overnight success. And sometimes things just take a lot longer than we would like. So I'm turning the mic over to you. I'd love for you to think about what's one small thing that you can do this week to keep your creative work alive, even if no one else sees it, even if the conditions aren't perfect, even if it feels like nothing, absolutely nothing is happening. I would love to genuinely hear from you. Please DM me or send the message to Martine at martineseverin.com. And yes, I do read all of our messages. So that's all I have for you for now. Stay creative, my friend. We'll see you on our next episode of This Is How We Create. Hi there. I have a quick favor to ask you before you go. If you're loving the show, would you mind taking a quick second to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite go-to podcast app? Here's the thing. Those reviews are like magic fairy dust. They help other creatives of color discover our show and tap into their own artistic superpowers. While you're at it, why not subscribe to our Substack newsletter, Creative Matters? Creative Matters is like a weekly dose of inspiration delivered straight to your inbox. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. All right, that's all that I have for you today. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Bye.